Good evening to everyone, and I should, on behalf of the organizing team, really apologize for the hinges. We actually had to switch and then get a new Zoom link as soon as possible due to unforeseen circumstances. And we hope this doesn't happen in our future meetups. So we are really sorry about this. So my name is Deborah Doma Kanubala, and I'm going to be the host for the event. And Salome and Asida are going to be the moderators for the event. Welcome you to the launch of the Women in Machine Learning and Data Science, Accra, Ghana chapter. So before I start, I'll probably want to just give a little bit story as to how this entire chapter came about. So that was early April in Ghana. We had this Indaba X event where I met Asida. So when I met Asida, we had a conversation as to the Africa involved because we realized that there was really very low participation of women when it comes to these things. So we just had a series of talks as to what we could do since we already found ourselves in the area. So fortunately, we traveled together again to Kenya for the main deep learning in Daba. And it was during that time that we met Franklin, who happens to be the organizer for Women in Machine Learning and Data Science, Nairobi chapter. And they have a very quiet, active chapter, which we found that, okay, it's possible to also begin our own chapter here. So we actually spoke with Kathleen about it and expressed interest in beginning our own chapter in Ghana here. So she spoke to us and connected us to some few people, but then for some few reasons, we couldn't pick it up from there. So later on during my army program in Ghana, African Masters in Machine Intelligence, I met Salome too as well. And usually we are encouraged to do a lot of community outreach by Mustafa Sise, the Google AI head. He encourages us a lot to do a lot of community outreach. So Salome and I also spoke about trying to impact our community, especially women. So we thought about it, and then I just told her that, okay, Asida and I already had this idea. So why don't the three of us just form a good team and then pick this up? So we went searching on how to begin the chapter. We reached out to the Women in Machine Learning and Data Science main chapter, Erin, and they gave us the opportunity to open our new chapter. So it's our pleasure today to be launching this new chapter, and I want to use this opportunity to welcome every one of you for joining us. And despite the fact that we had to change the Zoom link at the last minute, you still joined us here. So thank you so much and welcome, and I hope you enjoy the events. Thank you. So I would want to hand over to our moderators, Salome, and then Asida, who will take it up from there. So ladies, over to you.
Sure. Once again, you're all welcome. We are so excited to have this meeting and going straight to what we have. First of all, I'm going to introduce our speakers briefly, and they're also going to tell us more about themselves, right? So, first, we have Amerley Ampofo, who is a senior manager of customer insights and analytics at MTN Ghana. Amerley, if you could say hi to everyone.
Hi, everyone.
Great. We also have Sara Hooker, who is machine learning researcher at Google Brain. Can you say hi to us, Sarah? Sara Hooker. I think your mic is on mute. Your mic is muted, Sarah. Deborah, can you unmute Sarah?
Oh, sorry about that. So let me just do that quickly. Sorry. I requested to mute everyone. I don't know how that
Okay, ask to
to
unmute.
unmute.
Sarah,
Okay.
could you please
Could you
unmute
unmute
yourself?
yourself?
Yeah.
I think I'm now unmuted.
Yes.
So
So was
thank
it?
you for the warm welcome. It's so lovely to be here, and congratulations on all the hard work that has brought you to today. It sounds like there were a lot of different things. So excited to be part of this launch.
Yes. Thank you very much, Sarah. So next we have Usha Rengaraju, right? Who is a cargo grandmaster and a data scientist at HP. Usha, can we hear
Yeah,
from you?
hi everyone. I'm all excited to be here. I lead a couple of WiMLDS chapters myself, Bangalore and Mysore. So I can relate to what you said about the joining and the launch of the chapter, and I'm so happy for you. And I'm sure it's going to be a great journey ahead. Best
Yes.
wishes. Yeah.
Thank you. Next we have Nyalleng Moorosi, who is a researcher at Google AI. Is Nyalleng on? Yeah, she's on. Yeah. Hi.
Yeah, I got my, I think hopefully my microphone is working right now.
Yes, it's
Hi
working. It's
guys.
working. Hi.
Yeah,
Hi.
hi. Thank you so much for the invitation and thank you so much for all the patience, Asada, in making sure that, all the emails are seen and everything is followed through. Congratulations to all of you. It is such an honor to get to meet you all and to be invited here today. So thank you. I can't wait to hear all the stories from all the ladies.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And then finally, we have another Sara. So she is Sara Oppan, who is the head of data and analytics at the Ecobank Group. Sarah, can you say hello to us? Sara Oppan.
Hello,
Hi,
good
Sarah.
afternoon.
Hi.
Hi, I'm so honored to be here, and I hope we're gonna have a fantastic time with all the ladies. And this is just a beginning of greater things to happen. Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
Sure. Thank you. Thank you so much, ladies, for honoring our invitation. So, on this note, we'll go straight into the discussion. But before then, if anyone has any questions, they should kindly leave it in the chat. And at the end of the session, we would have the question and answer part, and we'll have all your questions answered today. So, all the questions you've been wanting to ask them, we're going to have them answered today. Great. So, diving right into it, the very first question is that we'd like to have you all tell us about yourselves and what you do, and take us through your journey into machine learning and data science. That is the series of events that have led you into your current position that you find yourself in. Right. So, who would like to go first? Um, I think
Okay,
Amerley. Yes. Let's hear
right.
from you.
Right. So as you rightly introduced me, I work with MTN and my job is to support decision making. So I form a bridge between the IS and commercial, where I work with data, I work with, as you would expect, tools and technology, I follow processes, and most importantly, I work with people across the business. And all is underpinned by a data driven strategy that we have. So that is what I do on a high level. But then on a day-to-day basis, I work with a larger team, as I mentioned, from diverse parts of the business, all in a bit to understand where there are challenges. So starting from the data, trying to do deep dive analysis to unearth emerging trends, risk and opportunities for the business based on where our business plan is. And then in all of these things to influence all the decision making, because as a business, our focus is being data driven, not gut feel. So that is where all the data science and machine learning and spatial data science and everything else that we put together comes into play. And most importantly, it helps us in our business optimization. Machine learning for me, has been a 20-year journey. Actually, when I stepped out of the University of Ghana, I didn't have in mind that this was what I was going to do. I knew I was passionate about decision making. And at that time, there was a new technology that had come up, geographic information systems. And I was curious and I said, look, if it's all underpinned by understanding location and spatial, and we are using technology now to answer all these range of problems, then that's what I want to do. So in a nutshell, it's a 20-year journey. It's evolved, and I've evolved with all the data and the technology that comes with it. So I hope it gives you some background to myself. Thank you.
Yes, sure. Thanks for that. So who is going to go next? I think Sarah is ready. Sarah Hooker.
Oh, okay. Thank you, Sara. So my background is a little bit of a zigzag, which may be encouraging for some of you. I grew up in Mozambique in Southern Africa. And when I grew up, my dream was kind of like Amerley is describing. Like I graduated and my goal at the time was different from what I do now. I wanted to study economics at the time. And it's because I was really passionate about thinking about how can we model the world. So I did my undergraduate degree in economics. And then afterwards, my dream at the time was to work for the World Bank. But after I graduated, I went to California, which the intent of taking a small break before I started my PhD in economics. I worked as an economic consultant, but on the weekends, I was volunteering with nonprofits, trying to help them with their data. I was volunteering with nonprofits from the communities I grew up in, so nonprofits from across Africa. And that experience led me to machine learning. So I found it so interesting that we couldn't model real world data well using linear models, which is the favorite tool of economists. And so I started exploring more advanced modeling tools because the goal in my mind was I wanted to explore these interesting questions and have the best toolkit possible. So I started teaching myself how to code on the evenings and in the morning. I joined a startup, and there, I think part of this question is how does it translate to everyone else? So I think the components of my journey that may be generalizable are that I was very passionate. I really cared about thinking about these questions. There was one period in my career that was brute force, where I was trying to find hours in the evenings and hours in the mornings just to grow technically. But also there was a component of luck. So I think that every career journey is what you can control. So kind of carving out your technical expertise and what you can't control. So having the mental strength to continue until you find an element of luck. But my element of luck was that I was at a startup called Udemy, and a director there gave me a big break. He allowed me to transfer from being a data analyst into engineering. And at the time, I wasn't good enough to just apply and be an engineer. So this was a kind of big moment in my career. So I joined the engineering team. I became much stronger end-to-end engineering. And then I decided to teach machine learning. So I returned to Kenya. My parents had moved to Kenya at the time. I was in Kenya teaching machine learning. And then Google offered me a job to do research. And so again, this was another exciting new journey because we've talked about this idea of, at the startup, I was thinking a lot about data-driven decision-making, which seems to be an experience shared on this panel. But at research, you're thinking like a step removed. And now you're thinking about how do you develop methods that push forward the field as a whole? And I was interested in methods that translated to real world impact. So a lot of my research, and it's fantastic that Nyalleng is on this panel. I'm very honored to be with her because she's my colleague and we do a lot of work in the same area. But my research is interested in how do you go beyond just tested accuracy? How do you train models that are resource efficient so they can be deployed to regions where there's limited internet connectivity, where it's not possible to charge your phone multiple times a day? I'm also interested in fairness and interpretability. How can we make sure that our machine learning models are inclusive and accessible and empower others to use machine learning? So that's been another exciting chapter to my career. And again, it has involved a brute force stage. In many ways, every time you open a new chapter in your career, you are back to being humbled all over again, and you have to remember who you are in the process and what you bring.
Awesome. Wow. So we heard from the perspective of a researcher and then also someone who is actually working on driving value for customers and for her business. So now we move on to Usha. Usha, can you share your perspective on that? I think your mic is muted.
Yeah. Uh,
Yeah.
so you're able to hear me, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So for me, like I didn't have any ambition to start out as a data scientist. So I was a financial consultant. All my dreams were I'm an engineer by education, and then post which I started working in financial services industry. I worked in some of the top financial consultants like Temenos, and a lot of my journey was in the finance, quantitative finance. And so my dream was to become a CFA chartered holder. And I just took a random break from the company which I was working, and I wanted to prepare for CFA. And so parallelly, while I was taking a break and taking my CFA exams, there was this Coursera used to give these offers, like, they were testing out, beta testing a special kind of an offer that is for certain people. They had the offer like you can take unlimited number of courses for $50 a month. So I was lucky enough to get that offer. So I can take unlimited number of courses and $50 a month. So I started learning a lot during that period. And so I started taking a lot of courses in machine learning. Not just machine learning, I was taking a lot of courses in varied areas like, neuromarketing, neuroscience, psychology, a lot of it. But majority of the courses were in machine learning and data science. And I mean, that was going on parallelly, and then my CFA exams were also going on parallelly. And then suddenly one day I got a call. I had someone had sent me a LinkedIn request with a message that they're building a quantitative, end-to-end product, and they trading systems, and they wanted somebody who understands machine learning and who's also into finance background. So they said, you can just continue taking your CFA levels, and you can just work part time with us. Do some consulting, like just few hours a week and all that. And so I just joined that team, and then I just started as a part time consultant, and parallelly I was doing my own things. And that's how my journey started. It was an unexpected entry into data science. And I thought after that project, I'll get back to finance, continue. But it never happened. Somehow, a lot of things, I was getting a lot of offers, post that entry. And then somehow I never got back to finance. Then I started consulting for a lot of projects in semiconductors. And this is how my journey started. And then my WiMLDS journey was like, one day I randomly saw I was going through a lot of blog posts, and I randomly came across Women in Data Science Stanford University initiative. And I was like, what is this thing? I was digging more about it, and then I sent a mail to them saying, see, I'm interested to be part of this initiative, and I've taken so many workshops, and I'm all this, and I just sent them a mail. But it so happened that for that particular year, for the Bangalore, the ambassadors were already selected, and they are in the final process of organizing a conference. So the Bangalore ambassador, she told me like, why don't you join us as a volunteer and get started. And so I joined the Bangalore organizing team as a volunteer, and I started organizing events with them. And for the Bangalore WiMLDS chapter, there was already a couple of co-organizers. One of the co-organizers, she fell sick, and she couldn't continue as an organizer. So she stepped down as an organizer. That's when I stepped up as an Bangalore organizer for women in machine learning and data science. And then I felt like, Bangalore is already a very, if you know about India a bit, like, Bangalore is one of the hottest hubs here. It's the Silicon Valley of India. So, it's the most well developed city in India. So everything is already in place here. So I felt, I should go and create an impact in a city where which is not developed yet. So that's why I started my own chapter in Mysore as well. And I started this year. I trained around in February. I trained around 1,000 people in Mysore. I went to the universities. So most of the Indian cities are very conservative. So like to get permission from the universities to give a workshop itself is a lot of process. So I got permissions from 4 universities, and I trained around 1,000 students in machine learning, basics of machine learning and data science, and how to get started with Kaggle for 1,000 people in February 2020. And we had plans of expanding, but then coronavirus hit, and then we couldn't do much outside that. So this is about my journey into the communities as well. So outside WiMLDS, I also lead the other communities like TensorFlow user group, and the Google developers group, and the TensorFlow user group for Mysuru as well. And TensorFlow user group, we started the chapter in February. I would highly recommend starting the chapter. We have hosted amazing speakers. We recently also had TensorFlow user group India Summit, where we hosted amazing speakers. And both the TensorFlow user group and the Women in Machine Learning and Data Science for Mysuru is one of the biggest chapters in India itself. And it's a lot of hard work. So one thing which I would say is, so setting up a team, or setting up a community in a city where which is quite conservative and which is not open to communities was very challenging. And so it's a huge journey for us, and this is
Yeah, I
about
can
my
imagine.
yeah, yeah. So this is about my community journey, and currently, I started Kagling because of women in data science. So there was a women in data science datathon which happens every year. So that's when I came across Kaggle for the first time. So I was the organizer for the datathon workshop. So I had to find women Kagler who could take the workshop for us. And there was no women Kagler at all. So we were like, there were Kaglers outside, women Kaglers outside Bangalore, but not anyone from Bangalore at that time. It was like 2 years back. And so somehow we found a male Kagler who was willing to take the workshop for us for that particular year. That's when I decided, no, I should get into Kaggle, start Kaggling myself. So that's how my Kaggle journey started. And I would say it was on and off, because I'm also a consultant, so I consult for a lot of startups out there. So my
Mm-hmm.
schedule is like pretty hectic, like it's
I can
very packed all
imagine.
the time. And so I was not able to, like, so I after I participated in my first competition, there was almost 6 months gap. And then again, I was a moderator for a panel discussion full of Kaglers. And then I started hearing their stories about how they became grandmaster, how they became masters, and all that. So that panel discussion reignited my Kagling journey. And it was like 8 months from that panel discussion, then I became a grandmaster myself. So one of
Wow.
things which worked for me in the grandmaster journey was like helping out others, teaching other people. And that really helped me. And this is about my Kagling journey. And so currently I'm also the ambassador for Z by HP and NVIDIA. So yeah, this is where I am, an accidental data scientist into, I would say, it's luck, and somehow things fell into the right place, and I got the right opportunities at the right time. Now I'm looking forward to help the other people get the same opportunities as well.
Awesome. Awesome.
Yeah,
Thanks for sharing on your
yeah,
community experience, your cargo experience, and all
yeah.
that. That was really great. So, next we would have Nyalleng share. Nyalleng, are you there? Yeah, on mute.
Yeah,
I've
okay.
asked you to unmute.
Yep,
Okay.
I've just gone off. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay.
Let me see if I can get on video. I keep switching the video on and off. Okay. So, as I've been introduced, I'm Nyalleng Moorosi. And it's actually very interesting. I'm glad Sara went before me. Hello, can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can hear
Yeah.
you.
Okay, good. Because like everything on my side is frozen, like my video is frozen and everything's frozen. Good to know that at least things are getting through. Yeah. So, yeah, I was saying that I'm glad actually that Sara went through because it's been interesting since I've met her. I think it's been about 2 years or something like that. There's been so much overlap in our lives. So a lot of what she said is going to be quite similar to what I would say. Um, yeah, so let's see, where did my journey? I would say actually this journey was more my journey with data and my journey with being interested in underlying patterns in data. I think that's really where it started. And it started from undergrad. So I did computer science in undergrad. I was doing computer science with some biology and economics. I was a bit confused. But sometimes I think confusion is good because it allows you to really explore, which has come handy really in time. So yeah, and I was doing computer science because I wanted to be an economist, and I figured there's so many things that are being automated, and so this seemed useful. Halfway through the journey, I decided no, maybe I'm more interested in biology, and so towards the end of my graduation, I was doing bioinformatics, and I did my honors projects in bioinformatics. So I would say bioinformatics is the first place where I really, really got my hands into data. And that was back in the day when we're still trying to annotate the gene ontology. And so that's what I was doing. It was a lot of alignment type of algorithms where you're trying to see where things match up and all of that. This was back in the early 2000s. So after that, I think that's when I knew that I was very interested in this idea of discovering patterns in data. And so but then I also I think this thing that Sara points to of period of having to really concentrate and push through and have to write a lot of code and make a lot of mistakes. That happened to me. So I did a liberal arts degree, and which was totally different from an engineering degree. And so I hadn't written as much code as you would write, for example, in an engineering degree. And so my first job after college was as a software engineer. I worked for Thomson Reuters as a software engineer, and they gave me a choice to either be like a requirements engineer or just really what they call a coder. And I was just like, I'll just sit and write code. You just give me the specs and I'll just sit and write code all day just to kind of grow and improve in that area. I did that for like 10 months. I really did not like it. It was useful, but I really did not like it. And then afterwards, I decided that I would go and do a PhD, and I specifically focused on machine learning. And so I went to grad school and I got started. And then halfway through, I got distracted. Then I started doing research in economics. And then obviously you can't get a degree in computer science if you're doing research in economics. And so that was that. The whole thing imploded. And then I was like, okay, time out. And then I left the program. After 3.5 years, I left the program and I came back home and I decided that, I was doing this in the US. So I came back to Southern Africa
and I decided that I wanted to teach a little bit, because honestly, I was doing the PhD because I wanted to teach, because I had had such phenomenal undergraduate lecturers. And I was very lucky because, in fact, I had 2 female faculty in undergrad, and I think that makes a difference. And so I really wanted to go and teach and be one, increase the numbers. Turns out I wasn't the greatest of teachers, so I did that for about 3 years. I found out I think halfway through that actually I am best on a one-on-one. So the students I was doing research with, we were great together, but in the classroom I could tell that there was a difference between the way other people who I thought were really great lecturers were teaching and the way I was teaching. I was like, okay, maybe this is not my home. And so I left and I went to work for the government, work for a national lab, doing, once again, data science. This was now called data science. Back then, there was really no data science. But then this thing was called data science because also these names keep changing. And so I was a data scientist for the government for about 4.5 years. After that, that's when I applied and I got the job to go and join Google Ghana. And I specifically wanted to join Google Ghana. So because I wanted to work with the people who were going to join Google Ghana. These were people I had met before in other conferences, and I thought this would be a great opportunity for all of us to be able to work in Ghana with the resources of Google and perhaps try to solve some of the questions that we prioritize. As Sara has mentioned, we have worked together, so there's a bit of overlap in terms of interest. For me, machine learning has stayed as a tool. All of computing for me, even from the beginning, like I told you, I did it so that I could do better economics. It has always been a tool. And it's like I say computer scientists are they should be like carpenters. Like your job is to create something for someone that that person can use. And so even in machine learning and machine learning research, I have my fundamental problems and my fundamental areas of interest have always been the areas that are very close to human beings. And so areas of fairness actually came because I had done some projects before, which it was very clear that the things that we do in machine learning could be very harmful to people. So we used to do language modeling, we're using social media data. And that's a very, that's an area of research that one has to be very careful to not be violating people's privacy and people's, these kinds of things, and not endangering lives and all of that. So after I had done that I think that was the primer, that was the real seed for me getting into fairness work. But I think overall, like I said, I believe that this thing is a tool, and I believe that it should work for everybody. And so I think that's the other motivator for this. When was it? About 3 years ago or something, I think now, 3 or 4 years ago, we also began the deep learning Indaba. So I was one of the founding members of the deep learning Indaba, which so many of you know now. And it's so good that you all know it, because I feel so tired so often. And it's so great that there's new people running it and new people taking it up and making it into their thing. But we actually really did start the Indaba because we felt like these technologies were going to come and affect our lives, and we wanted to be the creators of these technologies. This is why we formed the Indaba. We wanted people to understand the fundamentals of machine learning so that people could, Africans could do and implement the technologies that they think are important and run them for themselves the way they understand their world. And so that is certainly something that I will always be grateful to have been part of. It was also definitely driven by the fact that we were seeing some of these tools working. And sometimes we know as Africans that we are not always visible in some of these data sets that are being used, or a lot of the time in the decision-making process. And so because of that, that was the other thing that really drove us to say, okay, we don't just want to go out into the street and protest and say AI is racist. That can be one of the things that you do, but also we want to be able to not only call when there is a problem, but to be able to do things ourselves from the onset. Because it's always so much easier to fix things if you do it from the onset than to try to fix an already functioning system. So yeah, so that's me, and I am very sorry that I'm not in Accra, and it's so crazy that I have actually never met you guys. Yeah, It's actually really crazy. Like having lived in Accra and met quite a number of other people who are like in this space and never met any of you. So
Yeah, I'm
when I
sure
come
people.
back,
Yeah, yes.
yeah.
Great, great. Great perspective on your journey. So, the final person for this question will be Sarah Oppan. Yes. Sarah, your mic is muted. Um,
Can you hear me?
yes, we can hear you now.
Let me apologize if you can hear a lot of noise around me. I have to find a quiet place. So apologies first, and I,
We
I
can. I
believe you
think
can
we
hear
can
me.
hear you clearly without any background noise.
All right, okay. Thank you very much. Oh, okay. So, well, I lead the data and analytics team at Ecobank, the Ecobank group, which is in 33 countries. Um, well, I studied computing University of Greenwich, and my ambition was to be a software engineer. So I was coding in Java, C++, Visual Basic. Then I found another job, and they wanted me to be a business analyst. So I was like, what is a technology person doing as a business analyst? Well, apparently, it was shaping me for the future because in everything we do, we're doing it for the business. So I was a business analyst, and then there was opportunity from one of the business intelligence developer who was leaving to another company. So I said, oh, I can jump in there. Well, I've always been curious about data because I asked myself, the forms that we design and we develop in coding to capture data, what do we do with that data? So I've always been looking at the opportunity where I'll work more with data. So when that business intelligence job came in, I jumped in quickly using, what's the name of this one? Forgotten the name of that language. It's one of those business objects related tools. Then from there, I found myself in Ghana. I was in the UK, found myself in Ghana. They're looking for a data analyst for Ecobank. So I jumped in there. Now, over the period, my role has evolved, and I've been doing a lot of studying, self-studying. I did some work around business analytics with Harvard Business School, and then I also did something with the MIT. So after that, my perception changed towards data because you get a lot of questions coming in from the business asking, we want to see ABC. Can we do something, find out how we're going to generate revenue, more revenue, increase our revenues, how to deliver this service more efficiently, things around operational efficiency and stuff like that. And I realized that you can't use the normal business intelligence reporting to get this information, but there's something deeper than that. And I've started learning, done some self tutoring on machine learning and data sciences, mainly on Microsoft platforms and on Python. So I said, sure. So I modeled a few things for the bank, and everybody was excited. Then the requests keep coming in. So I need to form a team that will help me with this task. And we've done a lot of models around customer 360, around loan prediction, loan default prediction, and a few others, where we integrate social media data into the current transaction data that we have to try and find a more insight and deeper insight into the data they have to make sure that business is delivered better and more efficiently at a very low cost. So, I mean, we've done quite a lot, but that is not the end of the journey. I've worked with a lot of, there's Women in Technology program run by GIMPA. We've mentored a few young people who want to go into analytics and machine learning. They come in for exchange programs at Ecobank. But then I saw this as a big opportunity when Asida spoke to me to get more connected to the women in machine learning and data science, because when you are in the corporate world, sometimes you tend to forget what is happening in the industry as a whole, not just your finance industry. So I said, look, let me just come in there, and then also looking forward to mentor a few more people and also to learn myself to grow my career, because the moment you stop learning, then you die. So, I mean, um, my experience have been more of self-development. Everything I see, I read. Anything I see, I try my hands on. And I will say that there's more out there, and in Africa, we need to do more, because there are bigger opportunities that we haven't taken. We've just scratched the surface. And I'm more than happy to partner with the ladies and then the young ones on this platform to drive this agenda further. Thank you.
Wow, this was amazing. The journeys
Yeah.
and how everybody started has had me thinking, where did I start from? Thank you so much for sharing all of that with us. So next, we would like to know, what are some of the challenges that you had along the way and how you overcame them? And then if you were to advise someone who wanted to join into machine learning, what advices you can give to them? So I think that we'll start from Nyalleng. Hello, Nyalleng, please, are you there?
Yes, I was muted, sorry.
Okay.
Okay, you asked two questions, so I'll pick one of them, right? You asked, one was the obstacles and how one got through them.
Yeah.
And then you asked the second one was which one?
How would you advise someone who wants to enter into machine learning or data science?
Oh, what to advise? Yeah, I actually maybe I'll take that. Which one? They're both really, really good, and I'm just gonna what? Okay, maybe I'll go with the obstacles. Let's see. I would say besides, so like I said, I did my undergrad in the US, and the US does have this culture where there is a reason why there are so few women in the class. And that is that women are not expected to be in that class. And sometimes things can be rather hostile. And it's and you still find a little bit of that sometimes being undermined as a woman who's practicing in this area. I have been in offices, even being in some offices at Google, where I walk in and everybody is like, "Oh, are you the new intern?" Almost always, which is okay to be an intern. It's very good to be an intern if this is what you want to do. But the idea that you can't be anything but an intern as a woman, that these kinds, so it's a bit of these microaggressions that you might have to deal with. And I think the biggest struggle with microaggression is when you start to lose yourself. I think actually Sara touched on a little bit about this, but like it's so important to remember your own value as you are going through these kinds of situations which sometimes undermine you and distract you and occupy so much of your time with trying to prove your worth and not really just doing the work that you're passionate about. And so I would say like that would be something that is even more dangerous than people who actually undermine you. Once you start to internalize that undermining, that's more dangerous. And I've had periods where I have felt like I am losing my own thoughts. I am doubting my own thoughts a bit too much. And those have been like the hardest times. And I think those have been the biggest obstacles towards my success. Like once I internalize all of these kinds that are happening. How have I managed through it? Besides like this thing of you have to go back to your core and remember why you joined in the first place, and you remember all the work that you do. The other thing, the biggest thing for me, absolute like can't do without, is to have a community. I've had a community of people I work with from when I was an undergrad. I had this one woman who was in my class, and we worked together. We worked in projects together. But I've also worked with other people. The most important thing was that I wanted to work with people who build me, and people who I can be freely myself and really test my ideas with without them being belittled. And those, of course, can be male or female, but it's very, very important to have these kinds of people in order to make sure that you actually grow. I have done this even now in my research and even in my outside collaboration. I absolutely love the people that I've worked with, whether it's in volunteering. Sometimes we have some problems and sometimes we have some friction. But what's important is that we shared an agenda of like what we wanted the outcome to be. So even when I'm looking at who I collaborate with, I mean, like I said, I collaborate with Sara, and as you guys can tell, she's pretty fantastic. So spending your days chatting with her about work and working together and sharing your weaknesses, and learning from these kinds of people is very, very important to have these people in there, because otherwise you will just be so distracted by all of these kinds of things that are happening. So yeah, I would say the biggest thing has been doubting myself. That's been the biggest obstacle, and the way through it has been getting a good, solid community.
Okay, thank you so much, Nyalleng. I think that I would like to ask Usha to share your thoughts on this also. Usha,
Her mic is muted.
her mic is muted. Oh, Usha, please can you unmute
Yeah,
yourself?
sure. I'm audible now, right?
Yes.
Yes,
Yeah.
sure.
So the challenges for me is little might be little different. So for me, the main challenge is I'm an autistic person on the higher end of the spectrum. So India, autism is still considered a taboo, and so there's not much of understanding of autism in India as well. So autism is a spectrum. So you have people on the lower end of the spectrum, and you also have people on the higher end of the spectrum. So the moment you say autism, then people think the instant reaction comes to their mind. The instant picture which comes to everyone's mind is someone on the lower end of the spectrum who cannot walk or who cannot talk, or who's who needs a lot of help, is what comes to the mind. But people do I mean, in India, like 99% of the people are not aware that autism is a spectrum. And there are people on the high functioning end of the spectrum who can eat, walk, talk independently as well. And so this is a huge challenge for me. So for me, I'm neurologically different from everyone around me. So there are a lot of challenges which comes with it. But there are a lot of advantages of autism as well. See, for some of the advantages is like I focus on my positives, and I try to bring the for get as much as I can from my positives. So some of the positives which I have is I have the ability to focus, like hyper focus. So if there are few topics which I like, then I can hyper focus, give that kind of a deep concentration which might be difficult for the other people who are non-autistic. So I can put that kind of an intense concentration, and the energy levels are generally very high for any of the high functioning autistic people. And so there are a lot of advantages, and we also have something called brain filters. So my brain normally filters out a lot of things. So for a person who's non-autistic, they have to take a lot of steps, lot of efforts, to filter out what's good, what's right, and all. I think autistic people are blessed with natural brain filters. My brain doesn't pay attention to a lot of things. It only observes few things of that. So there are a lot of positive things which comes with being an autistic person. So I was fortunate enough that I am blessed with parents who are educated, and parents who were quick enough to understand what autism is and put me in the right kind of training. So for autism, it's very important that early detection of autism is very, very crucial for every child, because that determines, because if you can detect autism before 5 years, the brain is still wiring at that point. So that's very, very crucial. So I was fortunate to be blessed with a good family and good people, everyone around me, and the circumstance turned out to be very, very good for me. And so this is some of the biggest challenge, I would say, is India is a very conservative society where autism is considered a taboo. So if you take a lot of companies out there like Microsoft or SAP or JP Morgan, and a lot of these companies have got autism hiring at work policies in US, but the same companies have branch in India, but they don't have such policies in India, and the employees are not even aware about autism as a spectrum as well. So in India, like, it's going to take long time, to get the awareness. And I also feel, I have this double identity, not being able to tell. If I tell anyone outside that now I've, like, for the last 2 years I've been creating an awareness and all that. So I mean, things are different right now. But before 2 years, like, I was even scared to tell anyone that I'm an autistic person, because the kind of abuse and harassment you start getting the moment you say you're autistic is like, it is like a very cruel. You'll get all these cruel remarks, and things which I was not able to handle 2 years back. But things have changed. I've started creating the awareness in a right way, and things have worked out and things are good right now, but there's still long way to go. And so last year I organized a conference called Neuro AI, which is India's first ever research symposium in the interface of neuroscience and data science. So we had a lot of people coming, the top 50 neuroscientists across the world. There were a lot of people from the Blue Brain Project, Switzerland. I think Blue Brain Project Switzerland has got done extensive work, even in the autism research as well. And even in India, we've got like top research institutes like Indian Institute of Science, which is like one of the most elite research institutes in India, and it's in Bangalore. We had a lot of great professors from the institution speaking at the event, and it was a very, very high profile event with a lot of high profile speakers. And so we started this conference last year, and slowly we were developing. I mean, at least in Bangalore, I'm creating a lot of events and speaking about it publicly. And I've changed my LinkedIn Twitter handle, like, I've put I'm an autistic girl on the spectrum. So there are small things. Whenever I get a chance, I try to tell I'm an autistic person. The reason why I do that is, so since it's a taboo here, at least when I start coming out and telling, that would encourage a lot of other people to come out and speak about it. And one more thing is, there are parents here in India who are highly educated, like who have PhD and all that. But so they are very scared that if the society gets to know that their child is autistic, that is, even for a person who's on higher end of the spectrum, the society might say something. So they don't treat their child because they're scared what the society might think, and they're not giving the right kind of treatment and training to their child. And because this, I mean, and one of the parent whom I spoke, she is a PhD holder, and she is highly educated, highly qualified, working for a top research institute. She is very scared that a mother-in-law might say something and her neighbors might say something. So she want to take her child to a treatment to a different city, which is like quite isolated, so that no one will get to know that a child is autistic. So there's a lot of stigma here, and so there's a lot of hard work which has to go in creating an awareness. So as an autistic person, these are some of the challenges which I face. But when it comes for my work and machine learning and data science, I haven't faced any major challenges and stuff. My because I did not have an ambition to get into data science. It was an unexpected career, so my expectations were not that high. So whenever I get a work, I don't, when you have so much high expectations, and when things don't fall into the space, fall into place, that's when you find this dissatisfaction. When you don't have any expectations at all, you are happy all the time. So when it comes to work, I think I was lucky enough and fortunate enough to get a lot of opportunities, which other people are not having access to. So work wise, I don't have that many challenges, but as an autistic person, I face a lot of challenges. And especially my career, I'm a consultant. I'm not able to join a full-time job because none of the companies in India have policies for autism. So this is scary, and so I'm working hard to create an awareness. I do hope I might succeed someday. So this is
Okay.
about my challenges. Yeah.
Okay, thank you so much. I think your story has been very wonderful, and I think I share the enthusiasm with which you are speaking about this. So, Amerley, can you also give us your take on this? Oh, you're muted.
Like, um,
All right.
yeah,
So it's fine now. Okay. Thank you
yeah.
very much. And interesting discussion so far. On the challenges, overcoming them, I think looking at it, even from the onset, and I call it the road not taking, because as I mentioned, I was coming from a pure humanities, social science background with no understanding of exactly what to expect. So if I take coming out of University of Ghana 20 years ago, at least I had delivered my dissertation using the computer, but then that was the closest I'd come. I didn't know there was something beyond even Word document, I must be honest. So I step out boldly, and I'm keen to, as I mentioned earlier, solve the problems of Ghana. And then I just realized that I needed technology, I needed tools, applications. So by the time I got to the University of Leeds to do my master's, the whole objective was, well, if I don't have the tools or the hard skills, then I might as well pursue that. So that took me there. But again, I had oversimplified what it was all about. So it was just a lone journey. I want to do things to do with problem solving with data, and that was it. But one of the modules at that time, Introduction to Java Programming, is what just threw me out. I mean, almost threw me out, because I had arrived and thought, oh, okay, well, it said introduction, so no problem, I'll be able to get through it. But with my background, as I explained, it started off on a very challenging note. And every time I say this story, I just remind people that, look, I was sitting in a class. I don't even remember the women in the class. All I could always remember was, to my right, I had a Chinese chap sitting by me. To my left was a Greek guy, and they were just coding away. And honestly, I could sit sometimes hours throughout the night, 6 hours. And if you don't know it, you don't know it, because everybody assumed, oh, I mean, this is quite straightforward. So they gave, even Hello World was even a challenge for me. So that's how it was. But I decided that, well, if this is what it is, and if this is what I really want to do, then I'd better sit up. So that passion, that purpose is what made me overcome that challenge of what the foundation to this whole machine learning, data science conversation. So I decided to calm down because, when you're full of fear, it becomes a challenge even understanding the very basic things. And I thought it was supposed to be very basic. But for me, the fear is what was holding me back. So fast forward, with support from colleagues and so on, trying to, even sometimes I'd reach out to friends in Ghana. And that was the time when even the internet was, you pay per 30 minutes, an hour, and so on. So there was limitation even connecting with people. But even when I connected with people, Java programming then was quite new to a lot of people. And the answer, sometimes the response is, oh, why isn't your lecturer taking you through C++? Oh no, you can do something in C. And I said, we are doing it in Java. Either you help me or I'm out. So gradually I bought books on programming for dummies and so on. So I had to really rewind, calm down, and get through it. And again, when we started some of the applications, building interfaces and everything that we did, then I started feeling calm. And that actually was, it took me back. It was like a flashback to when I was about age, 7 or so? And my mom being a teacher was trying to teach me fractions. I couldn't get head nor tail of what was happening. But I recall then that after all the screams that my mother was screaming over my head and so on to try and just understand fractions, she went to the kitchen, came back, and all I could see this woman holding was a knife. And I was thinking, oh my goodness, I'm dead today. But she actually came up with an orange and put it on the table and started slicing the orange. And she said, when I cut an orange into 2, how much do you get? And here I'm sobbing and I say half. And then when I cut it again, and we went on and on and on. And I must say that picture came back when I was struggling, because I always call it my applied mathematics then. So I decided, you know what, if my mom could break up and even demystify the whole fractions to me, I should be able, one way or the other, demystify this programming. So I found ways to demystify it, and it was done. So I came back to Ghana, started my job, and I realized that each time I was put on a project, the other challenge with all the hard skills, techniques, and so on, I realized that what kept me going was more on my soft skills, being able to engage with people, brainstorming, because half the time you're trying to solve someone's problem. Remember, someone has a problem or there's a problem out there, and that's what most of us are doing, not per se. There are some, of course, that are following academia and so on, trying to build algorithms and models and so on. But those of us who were now on ground needed to engage with people. So as I said, it brought me closer to a lot of people. I had to take my time, because sometimes you're talking to people how you're going to solve the problem and they can't get head or tail of what you're talking about. So that connection, using my softer relational skills in getting people together, was also another thing that helped me to be able to understand problems and then go and build whatever solution or scenario that it was. The critical thing, especially in our part of the world, again, in the earlier days, early 2000, was to do with data. Today, yes, we've evolved with a lot of data around us, and that's what's keeping us going. Someone mentioned how data science, machine learning has always been there in one way or the other. Yes, but what has actually made it evolve is data and technology. So from where some of us started, it was like limited by data. So you're supposed to work with data, but you can't even find data. So even from before the likes of Google and all the big data, spatial data companies, you realize that sometimes you had some level of data, but you needed other layers of data, whereby today we're talking big data and so on. And the data was not available, at least for a part of the world. So you had to go around the world just to be able to solve just one problem. And so one thing that I've realized, even up to date, is yes, we seem to have a lot of data around us to do, and of course, it's core to what we do. But in one side, somebody might have so much of online data using, somebody might also require offline data. When we talk of maybe physical locations and so on and so forth, we still need that data. But I realized that we seem to have a lot of data, but when it comes to actual operationalization of what we do, especially for some of us within some of the institutions in Ghana, you realize that you are limited because there's no central point where you can turn to and say, okay, at a click of a button, I can get this data to add to the data that I have. So that has been one challenge personally in trying to, because you want to, as much as possible, have a complete view of whatever you're doing, a 360 view. So with all the buzzwords that we have around on data and so on, sometimes at a crucial point, you might not get all the data that you require. And I experience it sometimes, especially data that is out of the business, but you still want to have an impact because the service you deliver is related to people out there, which is related to maybe social and economic data. Where do you get that from? So for me, along the journey, those have been some of the challenges. As I said, the starting off and then being able to even reach out to others. So having a platform like this to interact with people, especially with women, is a fantastic idea. So it also goes to solve some of the challenges that I've had reaching out to people. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. This was so much detailed. So I think next we will have Sara Hooker also give us your thoughts.
So I feel like my fellow panelists have already said so many good gems. So I'm going to partly repeat or try and distill what matches with my own journey. But the first thing is congratulations to everyone for just being here. So it's a Saturday and you're showing up at this WiML kickoff. And that is the most important first step on your journey, is to show up. Because the trickiest part initially is the fear of even showing up. What will they ask me? What is this event? Will I be expected to immediately code and do algorithms? A lot of the most difficult thing when you're starting out is to have courage, and to have courage to follow your curiosity. The commonality in all of our stories today is that we all talked about being curious. We wanted to solve problems around us. We wanted to extract patterns of data, and we wanted to solve the problems we could see in our communities. But translating that and getting the toolkit for that, it's sometimes so scary. You know, Amerley's story about studying JavaScript and having that moment, I think I can speak for myself. That was early on in my technical journey. And we've all had that moment where you just feel broken in the moment and you think to yourself, can I go on? And you almost, there's that moment where you're like, I don't think I can do this. I just don't think I can do this. And it's getting past those 24 hours that are the trickiest thing when you first start out. Because starting out, particularly when you're starting out self-taught or teaching yourself or trying in the evenings, you know, Sara said, oh, lifelong learning. So much of what we have been doing technically, because the field of computer science and machine learning is evolving and is so recent. In many ways, machine learning as we know it is only over the last 20 years. So this idea of teaching yourself and pushing yourself, it can be sometimes so lonely. And it's how do you get past that? And it's how do you retain your mental strength? Because so much of this first part of your journey, I can tell you something, it's not about your technical ability, because that will come. It's a brute force effort, but that will come. It will be like learning a new language, and you have to invest enough hours, but you will learn it if you invest the hours. The difficulty will not be that. It will be the mental strength to believe that it will come. And I think that what I have found in terms of concrete suggestions is that one is narrow your vision, because the truth is when it really gets overwhelming is when you believe that the task is learning everything. And I would say that the best way to narrow your vision is to work on a problem, because what got you interested in this toolkit in the first place? Is it a problem in your community? Is it thinking about Usha's journey, Kaggle competitions? think about a problem because it narrows your scope and it makes the objective of the next 24 hours solving this particular subproblem, which will get you through 24 hours. And then you go on to the next challenge. The biggest difficulty I see with newcomers is hopping from course to course to course, and also from resource to resource to resource, because that, I can imagine, is so overwhelming. So in my own journey, I started using machine learning by working with nonprofits. I was working with nonprofits in the communities I grew up with, and I was really trying to help them with data. And that made it concrete for me, what I was trying to do. And in the process, I was working with other volunteers who were engineers and researchers, and I was learning so much from them. This is a second concrete thing I would suggest to everyone involved, which is work with people who are better than you, particularly early on. Like, I think the most important thing early on is to work with people who are more, where there's a big gap, because it accelerates your own learning process. And it's easier early on because later on you're in a position likely of seniority, so it's harder to get the same dynamic. The third thing I'll speak to is really the courage of what Nyalleng was speaking about, which is Nyalleng was talking about all these moments where during her journey there were challenges. I think, I've now been in tech and doing machine learning for 7 years. And I'll be honest, there are big challenges. And I think that we do a disservice to ourselves by not being honest. And at the beginning of my career, I would almost bury everything because I was still in the stage of, let me just get through 24 hours. But the longer you're in tech, the more you realize that it's not necessarily just about getting through 24 hours. It's about also changing the structure of how we work technically and being candid about what we are experiencing. And so what I think is difficult, particularly as you get more senior into your career, and it becomes less about the technical, because now you've got good technical command of your craft, and now it's about how you engage and succeed. I would say we must talk about what we're experiencing, because sometimes, particularly women, we experience things in isolation and we tend to blame ourselves. And the truth is, I think communities like this are so important because we need to speak about the patterns that we see so we can help each other and support each other. And this goes back to the final ingredient, is that you will not make it alone. You're going to need someone who you can be yourself around. And you can say to someone, whether that be your friend or your community or your co-organizers, yesterday was awful. Yesterday, I barely made it. And that you can trust them to keep that, because that will also give you courage to show up. Earlier in this presentation, at the very beginning, I can't remember who was saying it, but they were talking about WiML Nairobi. So the WiML Nairobi community is amazing. It's run by Mutoni and Kathleen. And what they realized, and what Mutoni told me, who's the co-organizer, was she was talking about how people show up to WiML. And she was saying that people tend to show up with friends. And if they don't come with a friend, they don't come. And so a lot of what they were trying to do was send reminders to people, like personal emails. And it made a huge difference, because the trickiest part in this whole journey is to feel like you're not alone and to feel like you're supported. So find that friend or send an email to someone you know, telling them, let's show up, let's do it. And that will get you started. And then again, tackle the toughest parts, tackle in a 24-hour chunk. Say, I'm just going to get through these 24 hours and let me do this one problem, and then let me try. Let me see how I feel.
Okay, that was so amazing. I think you summed it all up very well. So, Sara, Oppan, can you also share your views? Oh, is she muted?
All right, thank you. Finally. Right. Thank you very much to all the ladies. I think you have actually dissected this particular question very well, and I'll just continue from wherever you left off. Um, this is just by the way, but I'll say that it's a shame on my part never to be in touch with any of the ladies on this platform, even though we are doing almost the same thing. I'm sure Nyalleng is in Ghana, and I don't know about her. And my apologies. We'll try and link up better. But then the challenges that have been mentioned are the same. So I won't repeat anything that anybody have said. But how do I handle it, or how do I deal with mine? You find yourself with the corporate politics, and when machine learning is placed in technology, then you find yourself in the men's world. Now, I don't look at that so much. I allow my work to speak for me, because if you go first, they will say, like Nyali said, oh, are you an intern? You try to avoid that. And what I do is I use the data or the work that I do to present to them what they don't know or what they haven't identified over the period of time. So once they see the work you have done and they can associate with it, then they give you some kind of respect. So now it's not just you as a human being, but then they ask some respect and some accolade. And we in Africa, we understand these things. They add some accolades to it because you have distinguished yourself and you've made your data or your work that you do speak for you. So that's how I handle some of these challenges. You can be making a lot of noise. I won't budge. I'll make sure that whatever model I'm bringing out there is speaking the truth. Secondly, the other challenge we see is when you're trying to communicate what you've done to C-level execs, where they have a perception of their business over a long period of time. And you are coming in with a finding based on that same data, and you've threw in a few parameters, and it's changing what they believe in. So sometimes there's always that kind of rejection and saying it is not correct, it is not right. And then again, they'll try and find out, who are you? You know, this is what has been over the years, and why do you want to change it? But then again, the work that you've done um, will try and demystify that kind of challenge that they have, or that kind of understanding, and then they will tend to listen to you. The last thing I'll say is the data we find ourselves in. Now, in Europe or in the West, there's rich data. Okay, if I come to, if I want to understand the customer, I can pick a few parameters and get a lot of data from either Experian or from other agencies. That tells me information about the customer, where they live, and other people who have lived in that address. So you can model something very exciting. However, in our part of the world, we have that challenge where the data you have is the data you know, which is your internal data. Even social media data, somebody doesn't want you to know how old they are. So they can put in he's born 1900. What are you going to do with that? So the data we have here is quite unclean. And then when you throw that into the work that you do, sometimes if you don't take care, it will just mess up all your work. So that is one big thing that I always have to fight with. So before any other presentation or whatever, I try to restrict myself to what I have, and then what I introduce, the few external data that I bring in. But I have to make sure, because it's a man world and most people don't understand what you're doing, you have to make sure that what you're putting out there is correct. And that when they come shooting, you just lift up your work to them, and that will be the barricade for them slaughtering you. So, I mean, these are the three main challenges, in addition to some of the things that have been mentioned by Amerley, have been mentioned by Nyala, and then also Saruka. Thank you very much.
Okay. Okay, that is so great. I think that our participants have some questions that they would like to us to answer for them. So I'll put out the question, and if you can give us an answer, then you can take it on. So Priska Stevens says that I just finished my undergrad in statistics and would want to be a data scientist. Most universities out there do not give funding for data science. So I'm deciding to apply for applied statistics, but I still feel that it is not the right path to take. Please, what do you advise, or are the opportunities out there that I can take? So that is from Priska Stevens. So any of you want to answer that question for us? Amerley, okay. Okay. Amerley, you can take it.
Yes. Am I? Yes. So you can hear me. So for me, I think we've been talking about how broad data science is. She's mentioned that she's coming out with statistics. It's as broad as data science. There's a lot to be done. But personally, what has guided me through has been passion and purpose. What are you passionate about? Because it's not about the hard skills, but maybe the softer and skills, and then what you want to use the statistics for. So it could be you're passionate in a particular industry, say banking. So what about banking do you want to use the statistics for? And that's how it starts. So once you identify your passion, which goes within you, what are your skills? What are your strengths? I'm this kind of person, I'm an introvert. If I'm an introvert, what goes with it? Who are the people I need to associate myself with? If I'm an extrovert, what does it take? And there's so many applications these days that can give you a perspective of yourself, because you might be going around not observing, even asking people can give you feedback. And then from that, you can start developing your passion. And out of your passion, now you can define your purpose. Where do you want to start from and where do you want to end? I started off with, please, can you take me into the company? You can't afford, but once I can get paid something that even covers my transport, that's fine. The first 5 years, I was on projects that paid off within, a short period. So passion, purpose, and of course, for those of us here, we serve as a voice of hope. You can always reach out to others. I think somebody also mentioned how it's important because you might not know it all. There might be a certain strength in somebody that you also want to tap into. So passion, purpose, and then reaching out for a voice of hope. Thank you.
Okay. I hope that Priska, you have your answer right there. So Akosia is also asking if any of you have applied machine learning to humanitarian efforts, and if you have, if you can give details of some of the outcomes. Anyone applied machine learning to humanitarian efforts? Can take the question.
I think Sara has. Sara Hooker.
I like this, Aseda. Aseda is always straight to me. I could tell that was coming. I have, but it's interesting. So what Aseda is talking about is Delta Analytics, the nonprofit that I started 7 years ago. And the goal is actually to pair skilled volunteers with these projects and nonprofits. And to really think about how can we bridge the skill gap. That being said, I think the intent of the question might be, how can I get involved with Data for Good efforts, which is a slightly different question. So Delta is one organization, but in fact, there's many different ways to get involved. I would actually suggest this is an underserved area. When someone talks to me about Data for Good, and even thinking about how do I get started in terms of showing my technical skills, I always suggest look at the problems around you. Because I think that, and it's interesting, I'll give you a concrete example. So I have a student in Lagos who's fantastic. She's a part of a startup as a founding engineer. She's applying for grad school now. And one of the efforts that has really distinguished her is that she's working on low resource languages. And this is important because it not only speaks to her technical ability to produce really high quality technical work in this area, but it's related to her passion. So when we think about what data for good means, I actually think often people think it means that they have to imagine some project totally in a different part of the world. But often it means looking around your own community and asking, what are the nonprofits here? What data do they have? In an African context, the challenge is often, how can I get data? And that's a more difficult challenge. And so the skill set is often in, how can we leverage data sets that are publicly available in a way that still provides a useful signal about this problem. And that's a valuable skill set to have, particularly in applied machine learning contexts, where most of the effort is always on the data processing and cleaning. The other thing I would suggest, and here's one aspect which I think is quite important in the data for good space, commit an extended period of time. Hackathons for data for good, I'm quite grumpy about for the following reasons. So nonprofits often who work with hackathons have to spend a lot of time preparing their data. And what comes out of a hackathon is often the most complex model. It's everyone's coding and then they produce some very fancy model at the end. But most nonprofits, it's actually more of empowering them to use their data in a way they didn't expect. And so often the most complicated model is not the one that solves the problem. So if you're embarking on data for good, really think about, how do I make a sustained 6-month commitment to a nonprofit to work alongside them and hear their problems and equip them with solutions that work for them. So that's some initial thoughts, but I'd invite my fellow panelists, because I know Nyalleng, for example, has done very interesting projects on satellite imagery in South Africa. So I'm going to now do what I said it did to me. I'm going to say, Nyalleng, over to you.
So, Nyalleng.
Okay, good. Sorry, I was starting to like whine about it. I thought I wasn't, yeah, anyway. Yeah, so when I said that I worked for the government, that I think would certainly fall under the data for good, data science for good, because the purpose there was to do projects which would assist either a government department or a municipality, like deliver better services for people, or would help a startup just like, get more gravity, like whatever, if it was just advice, or we actually build some tools to plug into their tools and accelerate their progress. And then of course there was a bit of teaching. Yeah, I think the project that Sara is talking about, two things actually very important about it is, so we wanted to understand how the built environment, I was more even interested in the cities, because I'm quite keen on cities. I like cities, and African cities are the most interesting and quite complex. But here in South Africa, one of the things that was interesting was trying to figure out if the structure of the city had changed after South Africa got its independence in 1994. Whether it was still true that Black people were still living in the poor neighborhoods and the white people were still living in the rich neighborhoods, so if any of that had changed. And of course, satellite imagery would be good for that, because you can clearly see the shape of the neighborhoods and the shape of the houses. This has downstream effects, of course, because it means like you get to know what services are available in a neighborhood, how you're going to manage emergency services, should there be an emergency, all of these kinds of things you understand. For public health, this stuff is meaningful to understand how a neighborhood looks and how it has changed and what has grown over the years. So that was that. But importantly, I think, to what has been said is this idea of study your neighborhood, because you will be so interested in it. It is literally your life. Look outside and study that problem that you see, that problem that has been nagging you a little bit, and figure out if there's a way you can actually study that, because I'll keep you motivated. And it's true. This project, we're now on year 4. We've had people get their masters through this project, because yes, there is a lot of like technical integrity while you're still doing this, like data science for social good. So we're like year 4 in now. So it does take quite a bit of time. So yeah, so study your neighborhood. And then the second thing is when you do study your neighborhood, one of the great outputs of it is that you get to define ground truth. And it can be very important to get to define ground truth because a lot of the time, even when we do study things, we get data sets that have been labeled by people who have no idea how we actually live. And so they draw the margins about this is big, this is small, or this is rich, this is poor, or this is healthy, this is not healthy. But you understand your neighborhood and you understand like a process. Like, for example, if you were like annotating your language, you understand your language maybe a lot more than people who like theoretically learned about your language and are gonna like do it in that way. And so, yeah, so the outcome of that project is like right now when COVID was happening, this analysis was very useful because we could say where people were living, how they're living, and we could visualize that. And then hopefully other things down the line, we've been able to feedback this information into this like statistics office. So this is the census office in the country. We're able to feed this information back to them and show them this is how the city is changing, because we only do census every 10 years. But as you guys very well know, our cities change so much in 10 years. And so we're able to feed that back in. But yeah. But I think that like I would just emphasize the thing of saying if you want to do data science for social good, whatever that thing means, just do something that is useful for your neighborhood or for your problem that you have intimate knowledge of.
Hello? Is Nyalleng
I had a
still
break,
speaking?
so
Okay.
okay, so I think she's not. So I think I'll take the last question. So
Okay, so I can see the next question here. Let me ask that. So it says, I'm studying data science all by myself via online resources, and sometimes it gets so tough. Can I get an advice? And that's coming from Vay. So, anyone to give Vay an advice?
Um, Hello,
Yes,
this is
we can
Sarah.
hear you.
I would like to say this.
Okay.
Um, right, studying online all by yourself can be quite challenging. But the good thing is there are a lot of other communities that you can run what you're doing by. Now, gone are the days where it's just the book that you read and you don't have a lot of information online. But now there are lots from YouTube to GitHub and you name it. Now, you can be doing some of those things by yourself, but then when you find yourself in a workshop like this or a conference like this, you get contacts of people that you can reach out to. They can look at the code that you're looking at and then advise you which direction you have to go. So there's learning online is good. There's a lot of materials, a lot of videos that you can rely on. But then also you can rely on some of us on this community to give you support. If you come to me and I can't answer, I can follow on my team members and you will get kind of support as to how to reshape what you're doing. So that's a little I can add to this.
Yes, that was great. I'm sure you got your answer right. So the next question is from Angie, and it says, "What are some of the research? What are some of the hot research topics in AI and data science, particularly in the area of healthcare and education?" Maybe our researchers would like to speak on that. What are some of the hot topics? Sara and Nyalleng.
I was waiting for Nyalleng to jump in. um, so I on healthcare and sorry, what was the last topic?
And
What was the
education.
last part? Education.
Yes.
So I think in many ways, these are applied topics. It's how does our machine learning techniques translate to these important domains? So important research topics there tend to be about how does a model behave in the wild? So often when we train a model, we've controlled data set, we've cleaned the data set a lot, and then what we want to do is eventually deploy it. So it's making decisions based upon new data. So a lot of the challenges for healthcare and education are how do we make sure that the model behaves in the way that we thought it would based upon the training and test set. And often the challenge is that the model does not behave that way. So then we get into this area of how do we interpret model behavior? How do we detect bias issues? And how do we think about robustness? What I would say is that the stakes are particularly high for healthcare and education because it's human welfare that we are impacting. I want to say one brief thing related to the last question, which I think Sara did a great job of also saying reach out to your community. But I would also say, remember that being a machine learning researcher or engineer or data scientist, it's actually a composition of 3 separate skills, right? One is your technical, your coding. The second is your theoretical or your mathematics, the combination. And the third is your creativity. And I'll just remind everyone that none of my colleagues are equally good in all buckets. In fact, what you'll see is that people normally are okay in some, but then choose their strength and play into their strength. And that's why I think remind yourself, okay, if you're not doing so well on this axis, what are you good at? And think about how to also play to your strengths. No one is, I think the most overwhelming thing for a beginner who comes in is the sense that you have to be excellent all areas. And this is not true because no one has the amount of time to master all areas equally. You may have creativity, which means you know your domain very well. You know the data because you've seen it, you've experienced it. So you're able to extract features that no one else can see. You may be very good at coding, which means you're very good technically. You can implement things very quickly. You may be good with theory. You may have done mathematics for your undergraduate. You may be very good at putting together arguments. So I think also be kind to yourself. Remember, the goal is not to excel at every bucket. In fact, the most successful researchers and technical people in this field are okay across buckets and then choose their strength and work with people who complement the other buckets.
Awesome. So, the next question we have says, this is directed at Amerley. So it says that your story is kind of like mine because I'm also from a social science background, and I would like to know which resources, books, etc., which which have helped you have a better understanding of the data science field. Yes. So to you, Amerley.
Right. So just as my colleagues have said, if you've identified which particular area that your strength is in, then you start gravitating towards that side. So if it's on the engineering side, if it's on the analyst side, and even if it's on the storytelling side, because somebody has to translate it all into meaning, where exactly do you want to be? So there are a lot of, for me, I tend to go online a lot these days. I don't do maybe specific books. As I mentioned, once in my early days at stage 1, I did resort to programming for dummies and so on. But today, I use platforms like these because it's an evolution. Where I've gotten to now means that I share best practice with people, but still to be abreast with whatever is going on, new ways of doing things, I tend to reach online and explore exactly what needs to be done. So I would say the first point would be to reach out, read out which of them gets you excited. And if it does get you excited, just like Sara said, connect with somebody and then start it from there. So I wouldn't particularly point to one book but to say what excites you. And I always focus on passion. I go by what I'm passionate about, because data science is like, I call it the data orchestra. Many fields, many people come together. By the end of it all, it gives one good sound, which is the outcome, the impact that it sends on whichever project you might be working on. So just reach out there, read about whatever you can get online, and then you can take it up from there. I don't know if that helps, but hey, if there are any particular books anybody has read, I think we can also open up on this platform.
Yeah, sure. I think that definitely answers the question. So the next one is from Vay as well. She says, I'm from a medical background and I need to get into data science because I want to solve problems in the health sector. It's a whole new game for me and I'm really trying to find myself in data science because I see it as a very broad in terms of career and broad area and it's interesting. Can I get any books or resources for my journey? So she's talking about machine learning, data science, and health. And Robandip say he's also into bioinformatics and he um shares in the same question. So I think it ties in with what Amerley said, right? About finding your passion. So it's good you found your passion. So you could check out some of the resources she spoke about. But if any other person has any specific resource concerning health and informatics, you could share. Is there anyone on the panel or any participants? You could share it in the chat. And it would
See,
also,
for
yeah,
the healthcare, AI in
yes.
healthcare, see, I would roughly give answers to a lot of questions which went beforehand as well. There was one person who was looking for scholarship in statistics. And so there is an MIT MicroMasters program in EDX. And,
Mm-hmm.
you just have to pay $100, and you can you for scholarship. I think for there are two scholarships. If your income level is below a certain bracket, then you just have to pay $100. And if your income level does not fall under the bracket, then you'll have to pay $1,000. So you can complete your micromasters in statistics and economics. It's a very very good program, and but the curriculum is very tough. So you can apply for scholarship, and EDX, for most of the micromasters, they give around 90% scholarship. And so this is a good option for you to try that out. And I think Google has partnered with Coursera and released several courses where they give $100,000 worth scholarship. There's a press news about it. So I haven't checked out the Google courses, but then you can go check that out as well. There are a lot of courses out there, specializations in TensorFlow and all of it. For Coursera, you'll have to apply for the scholarship, and you'll have to wait for 15 days. And then your scholarship application will get approved, and that's also a good thing. For micromasters, one thing I would like to add is micromasters means you have 1/4 of the credit of the master's program. And for this MIT program, which I specifically mentioned about, you can if you the micromasters curriculum is so tough that once you clear the curriculum, you have a direct admit to their master's program. There's no GRE, no TOEFL, nothing. There's no other examinations required or no other interview required, because the micromasters itself is very tough. And if you clear that, you have a direct admit to their master's program, and you can complete their master's program in just 6 months. And this is a great opportunity for you. And there are a lot of courses out there currently offering scholarships as well. So I can share a list to the host later, which she can pass it on. So this is about the scholarships. And the second, about a lot of research happening in the healthcare space. There are a lot of research happening. See, I've personally not worked on the research projects in healthcare, but in the Neuro AI, we had a segment where the startups can come and present their work. And so we had a lot of women founders, CEOs, and coming and presenting their workspace. Especially, she has developed a gloves for her son, and autism, and she had developed a gloves for people who are autistic, and she's also developed a gloves for people who are having cerebral palsy. And there's a high hospital in Bangalore which has implemented early detection of the eye ophthalmic related eye related disorders, having an early detection of it. There are a couple of professors from IIT Delhi. IITs are some of the reputed institutes in India. They've developed a toolkit for the early detection of autism, and they've currently released it out and looking for feedback from people as well. So in India, in the healthcare space, there's a lot of people who are experimenting, and it's in the experimenting stage. With regards to this high hospital, they've already gone into production and they're quite successful with that. And so that's something. And for tools and resources to get started, there's overwhelming of resources out there. So one thing which I would also, I think Sara has also mentioned, so there are too many resources, but find something which, sticks you. I mean, not every resource might work for you. Different people have got different studying pattern, different wavelengths and all that. And so not every resource will work for every person. So for me, since my attention span is limited, any video which is more than 1 minute or 1.5 minutes, I mean, that's a bad resource for me, because my attention span is like, I cannot watch a lengthy videos and stuff, but there are people, who can watch lengthy videos. So some resource which works for some people may not work out for other people. So something which worked out for me was there's a specialization in Cohere, which is from University of Washington. This is a machine learning 4 course machine learning specialization in Cohere. If you don't want to take the certificate, you can just audit the course and watch out. The course is well designed. It's like it's like a practical course. So you have a little bit of theory and you have a lot of hands-on. So it's like not too much of theory. You have a practical, and there's fast AI specialization as well. I think Sara can add more on fast AI specialization. So there's fast AI specialization, which is more of a hands-on oriented approach towards learning. So these are some of the good materials which worked out for me. And if you're looking for some good resources to get hands-on practice on programming, so there are websites like Geeks for Geeks. There are websites like Hacker Earth, Hacker Rank, and you also have websites like Lead Code, which are great resources to practice programming. You can get started from the beginner level, and you have different stages where you can crack different stages. So these are good resources to crack programming. And for the bioinformatics, one more thing, there's also an alternate route which I would suggest. So just quickly choose some short course out there, quickly grasp the basics. There's also a machine learning basic course in Google, offered by Google. So you can just go and check that out course as well. That course is very well designed as well. You can check that course out, and then you can go to Kaggle. There are a lot of Kaggle knowledge competitions to get started with. So continuously learning theory, sometimes you will reach nowhere. You should try, whatever theoretical concepts you learned, you should try experimenting it, trying to solve or start with the basic problem. In Kaggle, if you go, you have something like knowledge sections where the beginner level programs to get started with. So you have Titanic, house price predictions. Get started with these beginner level problems, and whatever knowledge you learn through these short course, try implementing it. And then go with the slowly go for an intermediate level competition, and then start participating in the main competitions. To participate in the main competitions, you can always collaborate with people. You don't have to do it all alone. There's a separate, for every competition there's a separate thread. You're looking for a team. So your team members can be anywhere in the globe. There are a lot of beginners who are just like you getting started. You can collaborate with them. So when you team up with people, you will be motivated not to drop out, and you can also learn from each other, learn a lot from each other. So this is also somewhere where you can get some practical implementation and not get lost into online courses. And that's something which I would suggest. And with regards to healthcare, with regards to healthcare, personally, from my experience, I've worked in some of the genomic data science and all that. So there are a couple of competitions which are currently online. One got recently over in Kaggle, which is from Stanford Research, which is the drug prediction for COVID. So it's like genomic sequence. I think it's a pure genomic data science problem statement. And so which I would you can go and check out that data set, and for some, to get some basic idea. That's a great problem. And there's another problem in Kaggle as well: mechanisms of action prediction. It's again a problem statement from Harvard. So this is also about drug prediction and using the biological activity. So this is also something into the healthcare data science field. So there are a couple of competitions out there. So it will give you a basic. This may not mirror an exact real life situation, but then this might get you started with. This might give you, if you're very much blank, this might at least give you a picture of what it looks like. There was a recently one of the competition which got over, that is SIIMISIC competition, where you have a lot of images, where you have to predict the melanoma in lesion images. This was a recent Kaggle competition. This was hosted by a research organization, and the winner solution will be deployed as a final model as well. So I this is also a great problem where image classification problem. And so there are a lot of healthcare. I mean, currently, there's also another problem where you have to predict the lung failure. So I think currently there are around, recently gotten over problems around 5 to 7 in the healthcare data science, all hosted by research organizations. And that's a great way to get started. One more resource which I would highly recommend is go check out TensorFlow YouTube channel, where there are nice resources, to get started with, especially Lawrence Moroni. And there are a lot of, he has put a short course. It'll be just 7 videos or 5 videos for NLP. And he has also put something for zero to hero in NLP, zero to hero in vision as well. He has done it. These are very short videos, but these are great resources for somebody with attention deficit person, like you don't have attention to watch a longer video. Then this is a great resource. So these are some of the resources which I would suggest, and for the healthcare sector as well. So I think these are my answers for all the questions out there.
Okay. All
Yeah.
right. Thank you so much for all the answers. So I should first of all use this opportunity to say a very big thank you to all our speakers for taking the time off their busy schedules to come join us, share their experiences with us, and also share very inspiring and then what to do from here. So I believe that for most of us who have come in here to learn ways in which we can get started with our career in data science, this should be a good start for you. So thank you so much to our speakers for this opportunity. I also want to say a very big thank you to the participants. So I've been here monitoring the participants from the beginning till now, and I realized that we have kept a constant number of the participants, which actually means that they were really engrossed in the entire event. And that also says that just like Sara said, sometimes you have to put yourself out, right, and then make yourself available. I think you have all exhibited that and have made yourselves available and stay throughout the beginning till the end of the event. I also want to say a very big thank you to the Women in Machine Learning main chapter for giving us the opportunity to open up our own chapter in Accra. And I want to say that this is not going to be the first and last event we're going to have. We hope to have future events that would involve hackathons, trainings, and other networking events where we just come and then share our experiences and support each other, just like our speakers encouraged us to do. You need to put yourself to a community so that you can always get going when it gets tough. So we hope to have all of these activities in place. So you should also try to follow us on our social media handles so that once we have any event, we can keep you updated. And I hope that to our speakers, we can always come back to you, fall on you for any assistance with regards to if we need assistance with regards to resource persons who could come and then teach us basic things that we need. I hope we can always fall on you. So I would want to, on behalf of the organizers, I would want to declare the Women in Machine Learning and Data Science Accra chapter duly launched. So I'm going to unmute everyone, and maybe we can maybe make a shout whilst I take a picture or something. So Asida, could you also help me? I want to unmute. Okay, unmute.
Yeah.
Sorry. All right. I have I done the wrong thing now? Okay, I think you can all unmute yourselves now. Okay, so maybe we can probably clap whilst I take some shots quickly. You can put on your cameras if you want to. Yes.
Hey.
We are a lot. We are a lot, so I think we have 2 pages, so I need to ensure I take everyone. All right, thank you so much for your time. And also I want to apologize for the time and then the switch in our Zoom links. We're really sorry about that, and we hope this doesn't happen in our future events. Okay, so bye everyone.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye. Thank you very much, everyone.
Yeah, thank you everyone. Great meeting you all. Yeah, bye-bye.
Bye.
So if you want to stay back and chat with people, you're free to.
You're free to, yes.
We can leave this
all of us.
Salum,
Yeah.
Asida, can you stop the recording now? Maybe.
Yes.
Yeah.
Will the recording be sent to us?
Yeah, if you want it, I think we can share a link to the recording. Sure.